Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give it another minute or so to let everyone enter the room, and then we'll get started. Hello, and welcome to today's Tiger webinar. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you and your entire family are doing well. During these ever-changing times, we want you to know that the RIT Office of Alumni Relations is available to help all Tigers in the upcoming weeks with a variety of needs, including new virtual content, career assistance, learning, and networking opportunities. We also encourage everyone to connect to the RIT Alumni Association's social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, where you'll find up-to-date communications and opportunities about what's happening at RIT. To view our social media channels, please click the links in the chat box. You can access the chat box by clicking on the chat icon on the right side or at the bottom of your webinar window. We want to take a moment to thank the many exceptional alumni that have reached out to us during the pandemic, asking how they can help our students and the university during these unprecedented times. We also want to thank everyone who gave during the Get in the Game campaign. RIT Men's Hockey raised $510 thus far of the $4,000 goal. If you would like to contribute in support of the goal or give to other areas of greatest need, scholarships, or any other fund of your choice, please feel free to click the link in the chat box. Now let's go over a few housekeeping items. First, to help you enjoy today's presentation. If you're joining from a remote location and are currently signed into your company's VPN, we encourage you to close that channel during the webinar to increase the quality of the webinar transmission. Don't worry, the webinar platform is secure and does not require VPN access. All attendees have joined in mute mode. However, your questions for the panel can be entered in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen at any time throughout the discussion. We'll make every effort to address all of your comments and questions throughout the webinar. You are also joining this event using broadcast audio. If you wish to dial in by phone, the dial information can be found in the chat box. Please make sure to mute your phones when joining. Live captioning is also being provided and can be found via the link can be found via the bottom access of your screen by clicking the CC button. Today's webinar will be recorded and will be made available complete with captions in approximately 1 week following today's event. All participants will receive an email with a link to the recording. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box as well, and we'll do our best to get you the appropriate answers. Now on to our webinar. We're happy to welcome RIT men's hockey coach Wayne Wilson. With 22 seasons at RIT under his belt, Coach Wilson has guided the university to become one of the most successful and respected programs in all of college hockey. Wilson's impressive record with the Tigers includes leading the team through the transition to the respected Atlantic Hockey League. In 13 seasons in the league, RIT has won 4 regular season titles, 3 postseason championships, and made 3 NCAA tournament appearances. Coach Wilson also became the first coach to win the National Coach of the Year at both the Division I and Division III levels in 2010. Moderating tonight's discussion are the voices of RIT men's hockey, Scott Biggar and Matt Campbell, who will take your questions during the webinar. Thank you for joining us. Scott, I'll kick it over to you. The webinar is all yours.
Thanks, Ron, and thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. Over the course of the next hour, we will look back at this past RIT men's hockey season with Coach Wilson and look forward to next year's season and what we may expect there. So, Coach, why don't we get started by looking at the recently concluded season, and what are your thoughts, kind of an overview of the season in its entirety?
Good question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is just looking at the background on Ron when he was speaking there, the corner crew, the fans, the pep band. You don't realize how much you really missed that this year. It was tough, not having our fans there and the great support that we have. And just looking at the guys saluting the fans there in the corner reminded me of that. So it was an extremely challenging season, and all the ups and downs from arriving on campus to being in small groups and separated in different locker rooms and all the different return to play protocols that we had to follow and testing and everything else. It was a very, very difficult season off the ice and mentally. It's always challenging on the ice because your opponents are always strong and very, very competitive this year. So you don't realize when you're in it every day and you're going week to week or day to day at times with the testing, wondering if anyone's going to be positive, and then if one person is, who it affects. And I guess the bottom line is we only had 6 positives, which I guess, relatively speaking, when you looked around the country, we did very, very well in that regard. But it was always the uncertainty of the virus, of whether you're going to play or not, and with us kicking off the year not knowing whether we're going to have a season at all, and then being given that opportunity to play. But having said all that, it was a kind of a sanction for our players to be able to still come to the rink every day and practice and play. And it's disappointing regardless. I think at the beginning of the year, the coaches, the refs, everyone involved in this whole pandemic were on the best of terms and supportive of each other. But once you started playing those games again, it got heated, and the rivalries and the yelling at the refs, and it felt normal at times there. So it was different in that regard, but still very, very grateful. The mental part of it, I can't explain it. Even the weight off our shoulders when the season ended, it was a different type of thing. And it's funny how little our team talks about COVID, and we're lifting together as a team again. And we haven't had any positive cases since our season ended, which is kind of remarkable. Like how much you put into your season and the worrying about things that you can't control. And when I say that, you can only control about following the protocols, and we did do that, but there were still no guarantees that you were going to be negative. So a difficult season, but still very grateful to have the season that we had. And I know I've said it before, but really grateful to our administration for supporting us through something that was obviously very, very difficult.
Coach, very few of the games were played as scheduled this season. Only a couple by the end, and things got bumped around, moved around. How much did that impact your game prep, and how much did that, even just the mental state that the team would go into a game with?
Well, it's a great point, because I thought there was teams that couldn't play because they had COVID. Their team was shut down. They weren't practicing, and they kind of thought they're behind the 8 ball. But mentally, they knew they weren't able to play at that time, and they're all. They probably all had a date circled on the calendar when they were all able to go back on the ice and play, particularly the teams that got COVID before the season even started and didn't have to test all year long. What a huge, not knowing it at the time, but reflecting back, what a huge advantage they had over everyone else in the league. I thought it was really, really difficult to ramp up. Sometimes the day before, sometimes the afternoon before the game, having a game canceled. So you weren't ever able to give your guys a mental break. So even the one series, we were told that we might play Canisius. Robert Morris was scheduled to play them, but they had someone that was positive. So, for 2 weeks we practiced when we would have liked to probably given them some time off, whether it be giving them 3 days off, practice 3 days, and then get back at it, giving them a week off and getting back at it. But we're always on alert. We could play, and it might not be them. So we started off the season, we're playing Niagara because that's what it said on the schedule, but the schedule didn't really mean anything to us after a while. It was a team written on the schedule, but how are they, how are we, what's going on? And even we had guys, so we had a couple of players miss as many. I know they missed the first 4. So we have 4 guys miss the first 4 games of our season, and they weren't even positive. So they're kind of bent out of shape. And when we talk about guys, so freshmen had a quarantine twice, and none of them were positive this year, our freshmen. But when we're talking quarantine, we're talking staying in a hotel with only a half an hour leaving your room. So it's one thing if you're in the apartment and you can knock on the wall and they can knock back, or you leave the room to go to the bathroom or go to the kitchen. You know, you could, there's a little bit of freedom, or you could go for a long walk for 2 hours if you wanted to. But those guys in a hotel room, meal delivered at your door, so you got to open up your door, take the food in. I mean, that's as close to prison as there comes. And they may get a little bit more than half hour yard time. So, I mean, it was difficult, you know, like, so we went through a lot of the different ups and downs, and yet we only really had one house get it. So they were all kind of quarantined together for a certain period of time. But other than that, 2 cases for the year. I mean, it was minimal, but that's not how it all played out. Guys kept getting quarantined. So it was difficult. I'd say it was more difficult, the uncertainty and always having to practice in preparation of playing and practicing hard and doing the right things, than it was knowing that you're shut down or you're good to go. And so those teams, like I said, that got it early, never had to test the money they saved, and just the mental anguish, they never had it. So it's hard to explain, but and even as a coach, you're always your next moment, your next day. What are we going to do here? And you're trying to give guys breaks, but it's hard to stay on your toes and not get relaxed. So it was a very, very difficult game. And Canisius, who very deserving of winning in the playoffs without a question, but they were shut down for the whole first half, basically, maybe even 3 quarters. But when they were good to go, they were good to go. They were excited. It was like the start of a new season for them. Mm-hmm. Everyone's healthy, everyone's playing, everyone's ready to go. No worries about testing, no worries about anything. Let's go get them. You know, and the wear and tear on their body. So all they had to do was get in there. I think they had 10 games, or maybe, I don't even know if they got 12 games in, but 10 games, and then they knew playoffs were going to get them to the minimum. So they didn't have any worries whatsoever. They could play, and they're excited to be playing. I mean, to be only 12 games into a season, you're as fresh as a daisy, you know, like, versus practicing the whole time and grinding and still not playing that many more games than them. It sounds like it was an advantage, but it wasn't. Mentally, it definitely wasn't. Maybe physically, there were some advantages.
So while we're talking about COVID and the impact it had over this past season, a question came in with the variants and impacting younger, healthy people potentially more seriously. Is there talk about getting players either at RIT and or around the league and around college hockey, getting them vaccinated?
Yeah, I would say that our whole team has received at least 1 shot. They're all really close to getting their 2nd shot. Once they allowed that, they all signed up for it, and I think that's great. And I'm not sure what the protocols are going to be for next year. I know RIT encourages everyone to get their flu shot, employees and everyone. I'm sure. I don't know if they're going to need another shot or what the timeline is going to be, but there's probably a strong possibility they're going to want everyone to get that next shot whenever that is required. And I think it's, you know, I've received mine. It does give you peace of mind. It doesn't mean that it's perfect, but it gives you a good peace of mind.
When looking back at the season, if we move on from the COVID topic, are there any highlights from the season that particularly stand out in your mind of, you know, points of the season that really exemplified Tiger hockey?
I think there are a lot. You know, non-conference, we still finished 500, which last year we did as well. So it's 2 years in a row we finished 500, which when you think of some of our championship teams, they never did finish 500 non-conference. So splitting with Clarkson, tying Colgate at Colgate, and splitting with Long Island may not be a highlight, but it's still non-conference, and it was 500 there. We won 3 of our 4 won or tied 3 of 4 of our series in our pod. And then individual efforts leading off with Will Cavalry, second team All-American. Only a couple players in our history have received All-American status at the Division I level. Also co-player of the year, Dan Willett, first team. But numerous guys really either tied or exceeded their points from the year before and only played roughly half the games. So Elijah Gonzalez, I believe Hammaker, Nick Bruce, Kobe Walker. There was numerous guys, Dan Willett and Will were the other ones we've mentioned, but all those guys, matched their point totals very closely to last year and played half the game. So on a personal note, I think they should all be very happy. I think, something that if the season was canceled, the fact that our freshmen, and we're trying to evaluate our freshmen, particularly our defensemen, because we had so many, that was an area that they needed to improve. And I thought they showed great improvement, but with 20 games, that's really only half the season. And to see where they were after half a season, I would have liked to play the other half to see where they were. But if they didn't play at all, they would be entering next year and us not ever seeing them play a college game. So they would have been starting from scratch, which would have been a real setback in their overall development over 4 years in that. But I think that was beneficial for them, and being able to work out again kind of as a team. We're broken up into two groups, but I think that helps a lot too. So there were some positives there, but obviously, we'd like to have played a more normal season and gone through it all. But like I said, we're still happy with the season that we're able to get under our belt.
The season came to an end a little bit too abruptly in the quarterfinals, Atlantic Hockey quarterfinals against Canisius. Can you kind of walk through that weekend and the series of games?
Yeah, I just think it really came down to our defense, not our necessary, our overall team defense, which would include our goaltending, defensemen, and forwards defensively. Offensively, like I said, we had a lot of guys have career years, but when you looked at it, I thought the Canisius goalie was hot, and I think we became just a little bit demoralized as the weekend went along. So I was happy with our effort in the third period in the first game. I mean, we came at them really strong in the first period, had a really good first period, an average second period in the first game, and then we had a really good third period. But we just couldn't score the goals and had some, we couldn't get timely goals for, but we had timely goals against that hurt us. And when I say timely goals, good on Canisius. And then we start off the second game. Hey, let's get this thing tied up. Outshot them 15-2 or 4. I can't remember, but we're tied, and then once they got the lead, we still competed and we worked hard, but it was just tough on us, and we looked, at all the analytics. Our goals expected for were much higher than what we did get. And the goals that were expected with the chances we gave up were supposed to be much lower, and we couldn't keep them lower. So we'd like to work on our defensive play, and there's a lot of different aspects of that. Like I said, including the goaltending, the freshmen just kind of growing up a little bit more. And I think also, having said that, Nick Bruce, the way he was playing was good for a point or a goal. And when you looked at Spencer Berry being a plus, I think 8 or 9 on our team, and a veteran, one of very few veterans we had back on defense, missing him as well. That hurt us, those two things. And one was COVID related and the other one was a hand injury. And you're going to get those, but I think they also played, into a disappointing finish without question.
Coach, we always talk about the players with a lot of points: Calverley, Gonzalez, Hammaker, the guys at the top of the chart for career and for season. Who struck you this year as kind of that unsung hero who really stepped up but might not be up there in that top 5 as far as points goes?
Well, Spencer Berry, as I mentioned before, just has very quietly but very effectively, both on the penalty kill, his defensive play, and just kept it really simple. We had very few problems on the ice or continued problems. We weren't in our end a lot when he was on the ice. And when I say his leadership, he's not a very talkative guy, and I think he'd agree with that, but just, quietly just did his job. And so I really appreciated the elevation of his play this year, the opportunity that was afforded to him with some guys going out the door. And then he backed it up with how he came back in shape and ready to go, and then his play on the ice. So that was one guy that would stand out immediately for me. Bryson Trapdaw was a very similar player up front. I didn't score a goal, but penalty kill, very, very valuable. Face-offs, very good. Those two were very quiet leaders, both upperclassmen, and effective in what they did. And we're going to miss Bryson, and Spencer will be back next year.
Yeah, sometimes as we're, Ed, Matt and I are talking, we'll give out our own little awards and things. And you mentioned Spencer Berry. He's one of the ones that we thought was the most improved player season to season, by quite a margin this year. He really did stand out.
Yeah, and like I said, just quietly but effectively played a very strong game for us.
Looking at some of the players who were seniors this last year, Logan Drackett already signed with the ECHL Jacksonville Icemen, started a game. Are there other seniors that you are looking for to turn pro over this season or next year?
Just Alden Dupuis will be. He's looking at some things possibly over in Europe right now, so he's entertaining a couple of different things, and probably won't do anything until next year instead of joining anyone at this point. And he's going to get an engineering degree here, so he's pretty focused. All the guys will graduate on time. Regan Sieferling is going to attend a fireman school, and so he'll begin that in the fall. So he's got a little bit of work to do there. Bryson Trapdaw, I think, is just going to go in the private workplace. Him and a friend of his have a company that they're planning on doing. And we talked about Logan without, I guess I was going to wait till maybe in us, but the other guys are planning on coming back to pursue a master's degree. So we've got some of those guys coming back. That was a trick question for me to answer what 4 guys are doing, and the other 4 guys are doing nothing.
You could have said it, talked in generalities. That's all.
Yeah. Generalities.
Well, with the the extra year of eligibility, and it's great to hear that some of those seniors are coming back, particularly, and I won't name the ones you didn't name, but the reader can figure that out at home. Some of those players have had a lot of points for RIT over the years, so great to see it coming back. But another thing that has changed with the NCAA hockey landscape is how the transfer portal is used. And can you talk a little bit about what you think the impact to RIT might be down the road with the transfer portal becoming more of a player in the college hockey field?
Yeah, so I'll take it a step further back, I guess. Back at the end of October, when we knew all the seniors were going to get another year of eligibility if they chose to, I offered to all our seniors that it wasn't a pick and choose. Oh, this guy's got this many points, let's have him back. This guy doesn't have any points, let's not have him back. I wanted all of them to come back if that's what they want to do. And really, because I didn't know how much we were going to even play. And then we got hit with our season was canceled, then it was back on. But I wanted them to really kind of remember their experience here at RIT as a positive one. And part of that is having fans and the corner crew and the pep band and everything else that goes into making RIT hockey very special. So that was offered to them, but I needed to know in November. So I needed to know in regard to recruiting, where we were, what are our plans? If all 8 come back, there's our team. We can't take anyone. Or if no one was going to come back, what are we going to do? So really, the guys, the 4 players that had planned on returning next year, part of the decision was experience one of the reasons they came to RIT is a great hockey experience in front of great fans and everything else. But the other one was the education piece, where they thought it was real important to get their master's degree and get their grad work done. That was also a balancing act, and getting it done now versus going off in the real world and then trying to come back 2-3 years down the road to try and get it done, they thought would be difficult. So we're fortunate with that. So now, having said that, you go back and you start recruiting, and we were doing our recruiting virtually, and we have a program called Instat, and we're able to examine players and watch the teams that were playing, and some of them shut down, some of them are back playing again, but we were able to do our recruiting that way. And then you have the transfer portal. So you've got seniors that want to come back, but maybe their coaches have said, hey, we've already recruited our freshman class. They're coming. We don't have money for you to return. You have disgruntled players that weren't happy and want to move to a different school. So you have a lot of different people entering this transfer portal, over 200 people. Unfortunately, at least half will not find a home, probably in Division I hockey. They think they will, and they thought maybe they greener pastures, but a lot of them will not. So they're going to have to figure it out. But I'm not a fan of it, because in most cases, you have to cut players to have openings for new players, because they're going to enter the transfer portal. I don't think many kids are going to want to enter the transfer portal. They'll enter it at the completion of their year. At Christmas time, either they've been kicked off a team or something's happened. They're not entering the transfer portal. Hey, coach, let me just enter the transfer portal before I start practice or before the next game. That's risky business. Like, I don't know how to do that or how they would do it. But so at the end of the year, as a coach, am I going to wait and say, okay, and we don't have scholarships here, but am I going to wait with scholarships at the end of the year and let's save 2 scholarships to see who enters the transfer portal? Because if the player is really good, you might be competing for them and may not get them, or they may be players you're not interested in or don't fit what you're looking for. So in order to find a good player, maybe if you've used up your you've got your players returning, and then you've got, maybe you lose, in our case, 8 players possibly. If you lose 8 players, that's my dog in the background. If you lose 8 players, are you going to tell 8 recruits that they're not coming? So I think it's going to be a mess. And I think long as coaches aren't out recruiting their own players or cutting players like that, I think you've got to treat players fairly. And fairly means you're on the team. They've still got to compete for ice time and things like that, but you're not going over their head. Then I don't know what to say on that. It's just tricky, just real tricky.
So there's pending legislation in front of the NCAA to waive the year of to sit if the player does transfer, and that's kind of whole part of this transfer portal thing. How do you think that's going to impact maybe college hockey in general, but Atlantic hockey specifically?
Yeah, I just think in general, I think it benefits the kids that are interested in transferring. It benefits those that are transferring to a school. It's certainly not benefiting the kids that are getting cut from those schools to make room for the new players. I think it's a good rule for if it's not working out at a school and another team is interested in them, and the coach at the school that the player's at releases them. I think that's probably a good transaction. But if RIT has a really good player and another team just wants to take him because he's a really good player, I don't think that's a good reason for transferring. That's poaching. It's free agency without salary caps. It's there's a lot of different reasons behind it, but I think SAC was a driving force behind the transfer portal, and they wanted, hey, coaches can come and go, but you got to realize coaches leave one institution for another because another coach got fired. In the student athlete terms, another player got let go from their scholarship and said, see you later, to make room. So to make room for a coach or for a player, someone else is paying a price. And I don't think that's the intended purpose of it. It's intended, the intended purpose for transfer is maybe you don't have your major, maybe you're not playing. I think those are all valid reasons. If you're not playing, if a player on my team's not playing much and wants to transfer to another school, I would not stand in that way. But if it's for, I think it's whatever reasons, numerous reasons, I guess, but I disagree with it.
One of those things that I know you can't comment on names until they've have a deposit with RIT, but on occasion it will work out in RIT's favor. It appears there was a tweet that went out from a player from UMass Amherst today saying that he was coming over to RIT next season after not playing too many games with them this year. A defenseman. I wanted to ask you about that move a little bit. Looking to get an upperclassman defenseman, is that to kind of help break up this clump of defensemen you seem to have moving through your program year after year?
Yeah, I mean, we were looking for someone to give us a little bit more veteran leadership, and without commenting on the specific player, but also someone that was familiar with our program and some of the people in our program. So it would be an easy transition. And obviously knowing the coach or the assistant coach, I guess I know the coach as well, but the assistant coach extremely well, it made for an easier transition as well.
You talked earlier about the players, some of the seniors coming back and some of the seniors moving on. That extra year of eligibility actually extends through all of the classes. So, this year's freshmen and sophomore, effectively, they now have 5 years of eligibility. That's going to have a longer term impact on college hockey in general, but also on the junior leagues that feed college hockey. Can you talk about the conversations going on amongst coaches about that?
Well, that's interesting. And, as it worked out for us, for me, it was an easy conversation. I extended the invite to all of our seniors, but I would say, so if you just took our class of 8 this year, some of the conversations will be extremely difficult, telling 4 guys that, hey, if you're interested, we'd love to have you back. The other 4, let's get to graduation, then you're going to move on, because we are going to have to bring in some players, So you could be telling 4 recruits, you're going to come in and join 4 guys that are deciding to come back to keep our numbers at whatever your numbers are at, 26 players. But how do those 4 players that aren't coming back feel? I don't know if you wait till the end of the year to have that conversation. And then what if you've got 8 seniors? What if you've already recruited? Some people work so far ahead of time, they've got 8 guys committed. Then they've got to tell not only 4 seniors that we're going to have these 4 seniors back and you 4 seniors are not. You're also telling 4 recruits, we're going to defer you for another year and bring in these 4. That's not going to go over very well. So it's going to get trickier and trickier. And I think you got to have the conversations earlier. Who wants to come back to begin with? And getting your master's has to be a big piece for us. Like furthering your education one more notch is going to have to be important. But we haven't figured that part out. We're just trying to get through this year before we even get involved with next year. But those are going to be tough conversations. And you've got to be honest with it, and we'll go from there.
Using that as a segue into a little talk about recruiting, understanding that you are still losing some guys to graduation this year. Can you talk a little bit about your recruiting class and what we can look forward to there?
Yeah, well, I'll start with 2 guys that we actually, talked through with them to go back and play another year junior, because we weren't sure if we were going to play. and they were both from Manitoba, and we thought for sure the population wasn't as dense. It wasn't going to affect them as much. They were scheduled to start beginning of October. They did actually start, and then their season came to an end. But we thought they were going to be able to play. The one was MVP of the league, player of the year, tremendous player. And the other one had a very good year, was a little, also 1 year younger. So they both were able to play. He's actually playing in another league now in British Columbia, which started up at the beginning of April. So they're playing something like 18 games in the month of April. They're playing almost every second, third day, and that's going to be their season. I don't even know if they're going to have playoffs. They may not even have playoffs, but he's off to a great start there. So those guys I can comment on because they deposited like last year. They're different. The other ones I can't, but we're very, very excited about them coming. We're really excited about this class coming in. And we think they can really contribute, and along with some of the guys that are returning, seniors returning as well. I think we should have a pretty good team, but it's a year that a lot of teams should really improve, not knowing how many seniors are coming back and all of them, but it should be a year that college hockey should be that much stronger for it next year. I don't even think as many free agents are signing with NHL teams this year. I think some of the players are going to come back that are also in those discussions, come back to try and better their stock, because the NHL teams don't have a lot of money, and there doesn't seem to be as many free agents signing. It seems like the higher draft picks, like Cole Caulfield, people like that are the ones that are signing their contracts and moving on.
So a question from one of our listeners along this same line, with the travel restrictions that have been in place for the last year, and all of several of the junior leagues shutting down, how have you guys approached recruiting this year? And, do you think some of those trends will carry forward even once we get back to more normal?
Yeah, they definitely will. We have a program called Instat. So if Scott, you were playing in a league, I just type in your name and I can pull up. So if a coach calls me up and says, you really should give Scott a look, I can pull you up and I can watch just your shifts. So it's good to watch the whole game, but boy, when you're getting icings and all the delays, to watch a game, even if it's just the play and not the in-between, it's a minimum 1 hour. You're lucky even at an hour and 15, even if it's cut up right, or you're watching 2.5, fast forwarding it maybe through the intermissions to watch a game. Well, now as a forward, a good forward probably playing 20 minutes, I can get through three different forwards. So it's a good way to also figure out how we want to spend our money. Instead of hopping on a plane and looking for players, we may get a heads up and be able to watch the players and say, he's definitely worth going out to visit. Maybe meet him and his family while we're out there, and you can plan. Or even as a head coach, I might not have to go out as much. I really enjoy watching the players, but now I'm watching our recruits that are playing right now. I'm watching every one of them, every shift, because I can get through them so quickly. I can sit down in the morning with a cup of coffee, and so we've got 3 guys playing in British Columbia right now. I can watch all 3 in 1 hour. So I'm done. I've watched their game the next morning. So I'm not spending 6 hours watching them. I'm spending 1 hour. Big difference. So that will benefit us down the road. But there is nothing like seeing the players live and getting a feel for the whole game. And the thing you've got to watch for me anyways, is that I'm not just watching my player, because I do miss out on other guys that are playing well in the game that maybe we don't know about, because I've just isolated on my one commitment or the one player shifts.
Looking at the what we're losing senior wise, what does the breakdown of the incoming class look like as far as defensemen, freshmen, any goaltending coming in?
Yeah, we've got a goalie coming in, 2 defensemen counting the transfer, and up front 1, 2, 3, 4 guys.
So maybe let's start taking a look at other aspects of next season. Schedule wise, are you and Atlantic Hockey planning for a more normal season of schedule for next year, or are you going through the same contingency planning and everything that you had to do for this year?
No, we're planning on a full season next year, and we're hopeful we'll have full crowds too. I think that's the only one maybe that's still in question, whether full capacity, 50%, whatever percentage. It really depends on the vaccination and how this variant's going to react. But we're planning on a regular season and with non-conference and the travel that goes with it.
On that non-conference question, RIT was slated to host Notre Dame this year and head out for a pair of games in October. Do we know yet whether or not that is still on the docket?
We'll be heading to Notre Dame. So what we really basically did was, for any of the matchups that we were doing a home and away, which is covers a 2-season period, we just jumped to the second part of it. So we've jumped to going to Notre Dame, and then they're going to come here down the road. And so, yeah, it might be the year after. No, it'll be 2 years after. So everyone's just trying to keep their commitments, but just trying to figure that piece out. So by doing that, things like we went to Colgate, we're going to start off the season with Colgate at home. Because I think Union, we had to adjust for them. So our series of my scheduling kind of got backed up one year, and it may be a little flip-flopped with home and away, but all our commitments, we still have everyone on the schedule, just reconfigured.
So Colgate and Notre Dame is non-conference next year. Can you reveal?
Yep, we have Princeton for 2, Notre Dame for 2, Colgate, and who am I missing? I don't have it in front of me.
Who would are you looking at a Brick City game downtown, or?
Yeah, there we go. That's St. Lawrence.
Okay.
And that's still, I guess I should be careful what I'm saying, but negotiating, because of, we got to figure what's Blue Cross's guidelines at this point.
Right.
Or what are they anticipating? So we're all anticipating to be normal, but it may not be perfectly normal, but we want to get back on track. So,
I would imagine it'll end up depending a lot on the state that you're playing in. And since RIT plays in several states, it might be different rules based on where we're going and when.
And hey, if things don't work out quite like that, we could be hosting St. Lawrence at the Gene. I mean, so there's, everyone's understanding of this. We're liking the way things look for the future, but we're not out of the woods yet. So we'll keep figuring out. But we feel better about ourselves, obviously, now than we did last year. Although at this point last year, I thought this was going to be over with in a couple. We'll be good for next fall. But boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us were.
Well, fingers crossed that the schedule will come together and hold for a change. One of the other things that a lot of people are talking about, the league in general, with Long Island starting a program this past season and some other teams becoming independent with the demise of the WCHA. Is Atlantic Hockey either short-term or longer-term looking at adding teams?
Well, that's a good question, and that's probably better for our commissioner and our athletic directors. I think I think anyone can certainly apply to our league. I don't know if we're looking actively right now to expand. I think they'll probably evaluate it case by case, but we know our league works at 11, and but that's not saying that we would not entertain any other teams, but that decision would be made by our commissioner and our athletic directors. And I know there's teams out there, so it sounds like obvious. Oh, you have 11 teams, and this school's located here, and that school's looking for things. But I don't think It's not on the coach's agenda right now. And I'm not sure if it's on the athletic director's agenda as we go through our meeting. So our national meeting has been pushed back to May 10th, I believe. And so we'll be meeting before that, but later on. And then the ADs and our league office will be meeting after those national meetings. So later on in May. And we'll decide whether they want to evaluate applications, but I don't even know if any of those teams have officially applied yet. I'm not privy to that, I guess.
With the potential of up to 5 independent teams next season, do you think there may be more of a shakeup in the composition of leagues, or maybe some new leagues forming over the next few years?
Yeah, I still think that's always going to be evolving, and I think in some ways maybe you shouldn't add, like if we add one team as an example, and Hockey East is at 11, and I'm just spitballing here. So and they add someone, then we're down to 3. Well, what are the chances? Maybe we should leave those 5, honestly, and maybe that might encourage someone else to add hockey, and they get a 16 league. So I don't know where Arizona State is in their whole process. We know they're getting a rink now, so that makes them a little bit more enticing. Alabama, there's talk about building a rink, but they've got funding now for the program. Long Island just started, and they're in the beginning phases of trying to figure out where they are in the big picture. And you've got the 2 Alaska schools, but Long Island may be the school that's the furthest away, but Alabama and Arizona kind of makes sense that they're together. The 2 Alaska schools make sense. Maybe that, there's 4 teams. So I don't know who else is out there. It's a great question. And we certainly would rather grow than shrink, but I'm not sure where that's it. And I think every league is moving cautiously and don't want to be too disruptive, but I'm not sure where everything's at right now.
Long Island this last season kind of shocked the college hockey of the world by announcing at a time where no one thought they could pull it together so quickly, a D1 hockey program. And then they did, and partnered with Atlantic Hockey in order to get, a full season, essentially a full season of games, such as it was. Is there any talk, even if, we don't know yet whether or not they're being considered to join Atlantic Hockey, is there talk of continuing that scheduling agreement through the next season, or was that a 1 year only deal?
1 year only, too. I mean, I don't think the individual schools want to dictate who they have to play, where, when, and everything else. I know personally, I don't have an appetite for that. I like to schedule, even this year, like we had schools that the ECAC schools with only 4 teams, they were in dire need of games too, and obviously we have 3 of them right around us in Colgate and Clarkson and St. Lawrence. That my own thoughts were we should be taking care of them. Plus, they're Liberty League members. At least 2 of them are with our other schools. So with our affiliation with those schools, I would have preferred to be able to take care of those schools first and foremost, and that's where RIT is. That I'm speaking for RIT when I say that, versus another school in our league that's further down south. Long Island may make perfect sense to them, since Quinnipiac's the only school down in their area, and they didn't have anyone else they could play. So I do like playing some of the more traditional schools, and I'd like to continue with that.
You mentioned earlier that the last couple of weeks the team has gotten back together and are lifting weights together and stuff like that. I don't think a lot of our listeners are familiar with all of the work the players put in and the coaching staff puts in during the off season between now and October. Can you talk about the things that are pretty typical over the summer?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing really is they don't have an off season. When they arrive on campus, they're allowed to skate. We're allowed to spend 4 hours with them on the ice. So we get doing that. They're in the weight room first day of class. So they're off and running. Our season starts the first Saturday in October. This year, they don't get to go home for Thanksgiving. They didn't get to go home for Christmas this year. Traditionally, they get to go home for 1 week at Christmas time. but they're back here the 26th of December, preparing for the first weekend in January. They play. Once the season's over, they get 1 week off, and then they're back in the weight room and working out again. And they work out through the whole spring semester and next fall. But yeah, their commitment is would surprise a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people would love to play Division I sports and play in front of the crowds that we have here at RIT, but with the commitment that's required, birthdays, anniversaries, all the family functions that you miss for your parents or sisters and siblings, and if one of their crazy friends decides to get married in the hockey season, they don't get to attend any of those, so it's quite a commitment, and but that's what they love to do. So it's it's not sounds like punishment, I guess, in some ways, but I think they'd rather be with their teammates and doing what they do.
We're getting close to wrapping up. So if anyone has any questions, we encourage you to get them into the chat now. Only a few minutes left to go. Coach, for the off season for the coaches, what does that look like for you? Is it recruiting? Is it planning? Is it looking at tape? What are you guys doing, over the summer?
So right now we're really in preparation for next year, whether it be in the weight room, whether it be equipment, whether it be individual player meetings. So we have meetings with all our players, exit meetings, and then we're around for the rest of the spring, obviously talking to them. At this point, we'd also be going down to our national convention for a week. And then later on in May, the hockey season wouldn't normally end until the second week in May, where they had the Royal Bank Cup in Canada. The USHL would have their championships as well, along with the North American Hockey League. So that would all be at the very beginning of May. Then they have camps, which we attend. So often one or two of us will be heading out to the Midwest and attending some of their tryout camps, where they have as many as 60 players of the best players trying out for some of these teams, and start to formulate our lists. We do that then a little bit. Then there's even coaching development things, coaching clinics, different things that we're trying to improve ourselves on for next year, projects that we're trying to work on to help our team and to help ourselves be better coaches. But then you've got the national US festivals in Buffalo. They used to be here in Rochester. We'll attend those. And then before you know it, in August, all the paperwork, from visas to making sure all their clearinghouses, everything's all tidied up, so that when they come back to school, their housing, their equipment, everything's here and ready to go.
So before we wrap things up, this past weekend, the Frozen Four was held, and Massachusetts won the national championship. And people may see a familiar face there, Jared DeMichael, one of the assistant coaches on Massachusetts from the 2010 team. And Coach, you've had some contact with him. It was actually a busy couple of weeks as he became a father just a week and a half before the title.
Yeah, I contacted him the day after, which hopefully wasn't too early for him, and said his head hurt. And I said, well, it's going to hurt because you've got a young one, two young kids now, but you've got one that was delivered after I think the regional.
It was.
Yeah.
He got home, and I think a half an hour later, his wife's water broke, and they had their second child. But I said, it's going to hurt a lot more because those babies really don't care about your national championship at this point. So when they need something, they need it now and not any other time. But great for him. He was quite entertaining during our Frozen Four run, and it's good to see as I see him coming down the conveyor belt with the NCAA trophy off their chartered plane in hand, that he hasn't lost his sense of humor either. So good to see that as well. But yeah, congratulations to him, and congratulations to UMass, because only they know really how difficult this year's national championship was. And you hear people talk about an asterisk. There's no asterisk if you got through this year and beat the teams that they beat, there's no asterisk towards that. That was a difficult national championship to win, and for them to win it and in convincing fashion, quite honestly, good for them.
Yeah, UMass certainly played their final 4 periods of hockey of the season were a sight to behold.
Yeah.
So with that, we're pretty close to the being out of time here. So we'll wrap things up. Personally, I wanted to thank the Alumni Association for hosting these hockey webinars all season long. It's been a good way for us, as broadcasters, for the coaching staff, and everybody else to try and stay in touch with the Tiger fans over the course of what turned out to be a very difficult season. Hopefully next fall will be the start of a new season and a more normal season. We use air quotes there, hopefully more normal, where we can see each other back at the rinks. And that's certainly part of our enjoyment as well. If you enjoyed these webinars, please let the Alumni Association know, and we'll see whether we can continue them next season as well.
I would just like to thank you guys for this, and I really appreciate it. And my closing comment is I want to see that background behind Ron again next year. I don't know if can everyone see that, Ron?
Yep.
All right, good. Really looking forward to seeing that again. It's really special. You don't know how much you miss it until you don't have it.
So our thanks to you, Coach Wilson. Ed, Matt, and I really appreciate all the patience all season long that you show in order to answer all of our stupid questions a lot of the time. So
good questions.
Scott asked the good ones. I asked the dumb ones.
There you go. And finally, thanks to all of our listeners here throughout the webinars all season long, and also on the RIT Sports Network when we're on the radio during games. We appreciate you following along on the journey this season, and hopefully we were able to bring you a little bit of the highs and lows that occurred along the way. So Ron, do you want to wrap things up?
Sure. And again, thank you, Coach Wilson, and both of you as well, Scott and Matt and Ed, who couldn't unfortunately be here tonight. So that's all the time we have for today. Any additional questions can be emailed to ritalum@rit.edu, and we'll direct your questions to our presenters. We hope you enjoyed tonight's webinar. We have several others coming up soon and hope that you will join those. The links to those events can be found in the chat box. On April 22nd, Dr. Taj Smith will be running a session called Confronting Unconscious Bias and Micromessaging, which will encourage participants to explore and challenge their own biases regarding a range of identities. We also encourage all alumni to join us on April 29th for the RIT Alumni Awards, which will celebrate this year's class of distinguished alumni awardees, as well as the Outstanding Alumnus of the Year. This year, the Imagine RIT Festival will be held virtually and will feature the RIT Futurist Symposium. The symposium, which is going to be moderated by WXXI Connections host Evan Dawson, will feature Walt Disney Animation Studios collaborators Greg Smith, class of 2006, head of workflow for characters, and Brittany Lee, class of 06, visual development artist, co-presenting their works on films like Frozen 2 and Wreck-It Ralph. Ben Meunier, class of 03, VP of Global Product Strategy at Oakley. Matthew Peltier, class of 2013, CEO and founder of popular marketing and communications platform Community. And Dimple Joseph, class of 2018, frontline leader at Abbott Labs, who contributed to the company's MyNextNow rapid test for COVID, will join us all as guest speakers. Those are just a few of the many upcoming events we have. You can find us on our social media channels or at rit.edu/alumni/events. We look forward to seeing you all in a webinar soon. Finally, we also encourage you to share some words of wisdom with the class of 2021. If you're interested in sharing a piece of advice, the link to share your Tiger wisdom is located in the chat box. We hope everybody has a great night. And again, thank you all for joining us for Hockey Talk.